Greetings to today's webinar on the exit premium. What we're going to be talking about over the course of this webinar is discussing the importance of having a really good marketing strategy, specifically a multi-channel marketing strategy, is going to have when it comes to the sale of your business. Now, one thing that is crucial is this is going to be a very, very important time where we need to make sure that the messaging is going to be such that you are going to be able to tell the story to people about the fact that you as a business owner are going to be exiting. But at the same time, even though you are exiting, you can your clients can expect to receive the same quality of service, whether it is in servicing or in product that you had. However, before we can get to that point, what we need to do is we need to be able to effectively develop a marketing plan and a very sophisticated marketing plan. Now, if you've had a chance to watch a lot of the webinars that I've done, what you will notice is I like to have I like to build out the leadership team. And like, for example, with budget and development controls, that whole webinar was focused on developing not only the C-suite position, but also the controller position. And likely there's a chance that down the road, we might need to fill out other positions, such as, people working with billing and payables, and then even your HR department. And, obviously the HR department might grow to the size where you would need a CHRO. Depending the size of the companies that I typically would engage may not necessarily require that. That's when you're getting closer to 100 people that's an absolute necessity. But, obviously what you'll be discovering with a lot of the work that I do, it will result not only in the CFO, but also likely a full-time COO position. And obviously, since we're trying to help get you to exit, we will result in having a CEO, which will probably be actually your right-hand man. So what you're discovering is a lot of the videos and material that we're discussing is resulting in not only building out the system, but actually, really more importantly, getting the right person in that leadership role to build out the system. What we're going to be talking about today is going to be a topic that might wind up being a C-suite position, creating a chief marketing officer for your business, or it could be a director of marketing. A lot of this is going to depend on really two things. Number one, the amount of budget that we would be able to put towards it. So obviously a larger revenue company, there's a very good chance that this would wind up becoming a chief marketing officer position. There's also the possibility that based on the type of business, we might think more like a director level and a department as opposed to a C-suite position. So a director of marketing. So this is really the one area of all the topics that, I've discussed in these webinars, as well as, really the work that I do, that we may not necessarily create a C-suite position. We may just create a director position and, basically have essentially their own department eventually. But whatever the result is, the key is this. In order for us to be able to successfully sell your business, obviously we're going to need to make sure and get the word out at the appropriate time. But also, more importantly, we need to make sure that everything is well built and developed. And that is what the focus of this webinar is. Like, how do we get to the point so that way when we need to get the message out, we not only will have sufficient trust built, but also the sufficient system to make sure that we can get the word out. So having said that, what we're going to do now is we're going to take a deep dive into this webinar titled The Exit Premium. And what we're going to be focusing on is building marketing systems that are able to maximize your business sale. Now, really, the goal here is to be speaking to business owners who you may feel overwhelmed with marketing, but you understand that it's important just because it's all about brand development. And you may realize that, okay, whatever you have in place, it's just not enough. And you need to get a systematic marketing infrastructure that is in place that can get the job done. So what we're going to do is we're going to, really kind of take a deep dive in by starting off with a hypothetical. One company had 10 million in revenue, 2.5 million in EBITDA. Company B was a bit larger, 12 million in revenue and 3 million in EBITDA. Now you might think, okay, which one had the higher offer? Company A received an offer of 20 million. Company B, which had a slightly higher income, its offer was 12 million, the same as its revenue. An $8 million gap, despite it being larger and more profitable on paper. Now, why was this the case? Well, the big difference is because of the fact that Company A had not only documented and transferable marketing and sales systems, but Company B's, those systems lived in their head. So here's the reality. If you have documented transferable marketing systems, you're going to command substantially higher valuations, usually on average 15 to 25%. They could be much higher depending on the quality of them. And weaker, and you could even have a customer. And basically what happens is this is going up against countries that are comparable EBITDA, but they have weaker customer acquisition structure. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to be looking through the buyer's lens as the first core area, why marketing systems can dramatically increase enterprise value. We're going to look at the audit, how to assess where you stand today. And then we're going to take a look at the roadmap, the tactical steps to building an exit-ready marketing in 3 to 5 years. So let's dive in and look at this uncomfortable truth. What I want you to do is I want you to just answer this think about this hypothetical question. Are you the primary driver of sales in your business? The unfortunate reality is if you were a business owner, this is probably the case. Now, I understand that the CE role is really the face of the company. There's a very good chance that they will need to have a significant hand in sales. They probably shouldn't necessarily be the one handling the sales team, just because the CEO is going to have a lot of hands and a lot of pies, especially product development. And, obviously they really can't be the primary driver of sales. So if you are the primary driver of sales and you're a business owner, this is a major dependency risk. And the reality is, in close to 95% of middle market businesses, owner dependency is the number one risk that is facing them. So what we need to do is we need to come to terms with this, the fact that it's like, okay, if you're the primary driver of sales, this has got to change. And we got to figure out a way to make this different. And I know there are some business owners who they may chafe at that, either because of the fact it's kind of an ego thing. They feel like, okay, they need to be the one driving this train. And, they just feel like they have to be there. Others, it's a matter of like, they don't realize that there's something better. I am speaking to everybody today. And if you are a business owner and you are the primary sales driver, that is not a good thing. You need to work towards changing that. So in order to do that, let's take a look first at the buyer's perspective. What do buyers look for? Well, here's a significant insight we need to have. Buyers aren't purchasing your business. They're wanting to purchase a cash flow machine. And really the most important question that they're going to be asking is, can this machine keep running without you, the current owner? So here is a transferability test we want to do. Can the business generate leads without your direct involvement? That's the first question. Next question is, are customer relations documented in systems and not personal contacts? Do you have a CRM database, for example? And can a new employee execute marketing using only written documentation? So those are some questions you need to think about. And if you come back with anything other than resounding yeses to all of these questions, um, then you have a problem. And you have a problem with owner dependency, and we need to fix that. Now, according to M&A advisors, the valuation difference between systemized businesses and founder-dependent companies can be as much as 2 to 4 EBITDA multiples. Could be substantially higher, especially like if there's a heavy or owner dependency. The reality is, if there's if they're not systematized, that business is just not going to sell unless a private equity company comes in and is going to force you to take a very steep discount. So now that we've taken a look at what buyers look for, let's take a quick look at the due diligence checklist. When it comes to customer economics as related to marketing, here are the numbers that you need to have. What's the customer acquisition cost by channel? What's the customer lifetime value? What's the golden ratio, aka the lifetime value to customer acquisition cost? Really the best ratio there is 3 to 1 or higher. And then what's the payback period? Ideally, it will be under 12 months. So, that's the first thing we need to look at. Next, we need to look at the infrastructure. Do you have CRM implementation, and do you have consistent data quality? I remember working with one organization where it was a real problem trying to get data quality. And part of the problem was the fact that, there was a lot of paper that was still being used. I remember I tried at one point to, find a way to digitize it. I got a lot of blowback from people, and I just gave up just because it's clear that, okay, this isn't going to work. And it's clear today just because of the fact that this issue, which was a real problem, was just never fully addressed. Marketing automation workflows. Do you have things set up? And tools like Zapier are great at helping with automation, but finding ways to make sure that you have your marketing automation workflows and just get as much automated possible. It's key. I mean, you can never automate enough. Lead source attribution. In other words, do you know where it's coming from? That is such a pivotal thing. If okay, is this lead coming from, the website? Is it coming from a digital campaign? Is it coming maybe from, it could be like maybe you have a direct mail. Where is it coming from? I mean, there are many channels. I mean, especially with many social media channels. I mean, we could really break it down there. But the point is, you need to figure out where it's coming from. And then you have all of your operating procedures and playbooks for marketing written out. Absolute must. Okay. And then, let's take a look at growth and sustainability. Have you worked to diversify your pipeline across channels? The reality is pipelines are constantly changing. I know something like Facebook, while it is really, really popular, the reality is it's not as popular with younger generations. Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they prefer other forms of social media. I mean, that's just a reality. And there's a chance in 25 or 30 years that channels like TikTok or WhatsApp, they may be, one of them may become the most dominant means of communication. Of course, it's also possible that we mentioned TikTok in 20 years and people are like, what? It's kind of like goes the way of that other social media platforms like such as MySpace went. So, okay, so now that we've taken a look at this, let's just really focus in on a red flag alert. If a company is unable to provide this information because they don't track it, that's a problem. If you're not tracking any of this information, it means you not only don't know where it's coming from, but it means that you have no idea just how anything works. And so that's why it's very important you find ways to track these metrics. Okay, so let's take a look at some valuation math. Um, Now, EBITDA multiples by marketing maturity, heavy owner dependency that's undocumented. Even though it's in the 3 to 4 range, it could be lower. And the reality is, you know, the only companies that's going to buy this is private equity, and they're going to try to pay as little as possible for it. So even though I'm giving you those multiples, the reality is it's going to be much worse, probably, just because they know they got you. Now, some systems are documented, some owner involvement. It might be 4 to 5 EBITDA. Again, here, the only buyer who's going to want to get you probably is private equity, just because they know that they can get a discount. Now, if you have documented systems and team execution, it's going to be closer to 5 to 7. And there's a very good chance that you're actually going to get this. The other two figures, I'm just giving you an idea, and it's probably not a very good one just because of the fact that you will probably find only really unattractive offers just because of where you are. And then finally, fully systematized and scalable. This is where you're going to be in the 7 and 8 plus range. In other words, this is where you're getting premium value. So getting everything fully systematized and scalable is crucial. So um, it's just my hope that, just having said this, that it really, the point that's getting home here is that, you may think, okay, well, if it's heavy owner dependency, then, it's valuable still. Not really. I mean, you could get something from it, but the reality is it's going to be sold at a massive discount. So basically, take the multiples I've said with a grain of salt, just because you're really going to be at the mercy of a PE firm. Okay, so now that we've done a look at that, let's take a look at the red flags that can kill a deal. And really, what's important here is these 7 big things. Is number one, the owner is the marketing, relationship, knowledge, and brand tied to the founder. That's going to be a no go, and the reason why is because they're going to look at this and they're going to go, okay, well, it with as soon as this founder leaves, there's nothing there. No documented processes. Marketing exists in the owner's head. Yep, I can guarantee you they'll probably walk. Customer concentration is a client that's representing 30-40% of revenue. Ideally, if you can get it to 20% or less and just keep getting it down. And by the way, when I say keep getting it down, I don't mean by telling them, hey, stop using our product. Start trying to find ways to build up the other accounts and expand accounts. Reduce customer concentration and really just try to get the customer concentration as minimal as possible. Missing attribution. In other words, you have no idea where things are going or coming from. Yeah, that's not going to fly. Single channel dependency. You have only one source you're getting all those leads. What happens when that one source dries up? Your goose is cooked. Definitely not good. Declining organic traffic. In other words, you're losing ground to competitors. Do you know why? Well, if it's a combination of everything else that we've looked at, that's probably why. And then finally, you have messy or non-existent CRM. I remember one of the first businesses I worked with had a 3x5 card file of all customer records. And it also had a book of all the customer records printed out. Now, I kind of would have loved to know what program they used, just because I would have loved to, like, maybe figure out a way to transfer it into something. But my job was getting that transferred. And there's a reason why that business, when the owner bought it, it was for such a small amount. And it was just because of the fact that, you know, it was non-existent. Basically, the entire system needed to be built up. So those are the red flags. And, if you have any of those, you need to address them now. Those are set. And the reality is a lot of them are interrelated. So if you start addressing one, the reality is there are probably others that are present. And if you just work towards fixing them, thankfully there'll be a bit of an element of um, like, kind of compounding interest is like as you fix things more and more, the reality is okay, uh, it's going to actually have benefits. So essentially, like a rising tide lifting all boats, everything else will get fixed. Okay, so let's take a look at how mature your marketing is. Um, First stage, ad hoc. Basically, you're reactive, everything is siloed, and you're just simply guessing at the results. The answer, you're not exit ready. If it's defined where you have a basic calendar and some tracking, you're in the early stage. You're taking baby steps there, but you're not there. Now, if it integrated, the systems are connecting, and you're actually doing lead tracking, then you're getting prepared. Um, Optimized is when you're data driven, you're automation active, and you're actually doing forecasts. That is when you're ready. And then transformational is when you're actually predictive and you're in a competitive position. And that's when you're premium ready. So here's a major insight. Most founder dependent businesses tend to be stuck between stages 1 and 2. And honestly, what's going to happen here is how I would approach this is just because this is so important, and having a professional is once we begin to figure out where you are, and especially when we're kind of getting to um, stage 3 where we're beginning to get systems connected, that is when we really need to bring in either a CMO or a director of marketing, just because of the fact that they're going to need to take this and run with it. And that's really my philosophy on this as well. So here are some self-assessment questions. Do you have a marketing calendar that, basically you have everything planned in 90 days in advance? Everything like social media obviously is big. I mean, do you have any discounts or like promotions that you plan to run? What are you trying to do? I mean, and really just having all of that on a comprehensive calendar is a must. I would almost even argue having, it thought out several years in advance. And I know this because when I was actually president of an orchestra, we did something similar where I actually had several seasons planned out, including a lot the press releases and marketing. So, the more in advance you can get, the better. Do your core systems like your website, your CRM, and your email, do they talk to each other? I know some like HubSpot CRM, which is what I use for my business, you know, all of that is fully integrated. And if that is integrated, it's a huge plus. Now, can you track leads from first touch to closed sale? That is a big thing. And again, that's the beauty of, like, for example, with HubSpot, a lot of all my correspondence is archived according to contacts. So, it's already automatically tracking leads. So that way, once I go from, a lead that, I just maybe was introduced to they convert, hey, it's, you can just track leads incredibly effectively. And do your key marketing processes run without manual input? Now, there's going to need to be some, but if you can get a lot systematized, like automatic posting, or like even having an auto response with your different social media channels, just to let people know that you got it, that is a huge step in the right direction. Okay, so now that we've kind of looked at um, this, let's take a look at some critical founder dependency issues with this assessment. Okay, if any of these apply to your business, you need to have a check. The owner handles key sales closely. Now, one thing I should mention is it is possible that there are going to be major sales. And, you know, you can and probably should have a role in it, or whoever the CEO is. They should be involved if they're substantial. But, handling the sales closing, you really need to have a team. And really, when you look at it with, a larger company, yeah, the CEO is going to be involved, but, there are going to be other players who are going to need to be involved. The owner is a primary customer relationship manager. Check that. If this is what's happening with your business, check it. Customers call owner directly instead of the team. Customer loyalty tied to the owner personally. Pricing decisions require owner approval. Marketing campaign decisions need owner input. And vendor relationships depend on owners' connections. Now, with the exception of the first one, which, really it could go either way. There probably should be some role, but it shouldn't be just you by yourself handling it. If there are any other checks, we have a dependency problem with this audit, and you need to reduce it. Our goal is to get to zero. And the reason it is to get to zero is because right now, as the owner, you're likely operating as the CEO. If you can get to the point where you actually have a CEO who is actually handling that and get it down to zero, then you're ready for exit. But if you are, you know, if you feel the need to handle it, well then, what happens when you're gone? So that's why, again, that number one that comes with a caveat. I understand there it can be significant, but if you're getting ready to exit, you need to get to the point where you're not handling anything. So here is the 90-day test. If you were to be completely unreachable for 90 days, would your business be able to continue generating leads, nurturing prospects, closing sales, and retaining customers? If you can't answer yes to that, then you have a founder dependency problem. Okay, now that we've taken a look at this, let's take a quick look at the value builder assessment. Now, here are going to be the 8 key value drivers. And what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at just how many of them have connections with marketing. Financial performance. Marketing can drive that up. Growth potential. Marketing can drive that up. Switzerland structure or diversification. Marketing can help you diversify. Valuation teeter-totter, aka cash flow. Well, marketing can help you out there. Recurring revenue. This is becoming a broken record. I mean, you can see how marketing, monopoly control, or aka differentiation, again, marketing. Customer satisfaction. Well, that's obviously going to be one of your messages. It's like, okay, you want to make it clear in your marketing that you want your customers to be satisfied. So yes, marketing can handle that. And then hub and spoke owner dependency. If this is something that, what we're looking at is we need to, this is really the only area, obviously, that marketing is not necessarily going to address. What is going to address it is if you're the owner, you need to be willing to turn it over. Okay, so hopefully you listen to those 8 value drivers and you're beginning to realize the importance of just really marketing and having a really good solid marketing plan here. And really, again, just this is one of those things that when it comes to marketing, I mean, unless you have somebody who is a really good marketing guru who's already doing this, it's probably fine to maybe initially outsource this to a marketing agency and then eventually grow like maybe grow this to something internally. Um, just because of the fact that, you got to start somewhere. And the reality is, marketing just plays such a huge role here. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is your exit ready checklist. Um, what you need to do, first of all, strategy and planning. Does a written marketing strategy exist? I mean, it doesn't need to be look like it is straight out of a textbook. Do you have a strategy? Do you have a target audience and persona? Do you know who you're going for? There have been every organization I've worked with, I was able to very quickly over time figure out not only the target audience but also the segmentation that it looked like as far as like the subgroups. Do you have a 12-month marketing calendar? Do you have quantified marketing goals? Okay, that's the first part, strategy and planning. Next up, systems and technology. Do you have CRM implemented and are you using it consistently? Do you have an email marketing platform? These days, just because of email, I'm beginning to feel like it's less and less effective. Having an SMS platform may actually be something that you want to consider. Do you have are your analytics tracking properly configured? And do you have your systems integrated? Because, and the beauty of it is today with different integrations, it is very, very, very easy for us to achieve this. Okay, processes documented. Do you have SOPs for marketing? Do you have lead qualification criteria? Do you have your campaign workflows documented? Do you have your brand guidelines formalized? Basically, what do you want your business to look like? Vision statement, mission statement, logo. Do you have everything that it takes to quantify your brand? After that, let's hit data. Can you calculate your CAC accurately? Do you know what your LTV is by customer segment? Can you track your leads by source? Do you have 3+ years of marketing data available? So here's the reality. You need to count your check marks. Every unchecked box represents an opportunity to increase your exit value. This is an absolute must. You've got to figure out a way to check as many of these boxes as possible. If you can check them all, you're in great shape. But if you're looking at them, they're like half to like maybe a third are checked. It's like, yes, we need to get on to this. Okay, so now that we're at this point, let's take a look at the tactical implementation. So really, what we need to go in building from minimal infrastructure is this. Tier 1, which is your non-negotiable foundation, CRM needs to be implemented. Get your website optimized, lead capture, basic SEO. Email marketing setup. You need to at least start beginning to build your list. And then basic analytics, your Google Analytics 4 and Search Console, for example. Then your next thing, your second tier of growth, which is year 2, you're working to get your marketing automated. You have your content marketing program in place. You get paid search, and then you get full reporting dashboards. And then the final tier, which is for scale and optimize, what you need to do is you need to get advanced segmentation and personalization. In other words, at this point, you not only know what your target audience looks like, but you can easily segment everything as needed. You have multi-touch attribution, and you have a complete and a thorough SOP library, and your marketing team, most importantly, is developed. And really, what I would argue is this is why I believe that once you start moving towards, okay, getting the basics and really start working really into tier 2, that's when you need to bring in either a director of marketing or your CMO, because even though there are some things we can get going, basically a lot of the work that they're going to need to do, we need to make sure that they're the ones doing it. And here's what's also important. Don't skip any stages. Everything builds on everything else. If you think, okay, I can wait until CRM until year 2, well, the problem is you really need it today. because there's a lot of stuff in year 2 that you're not going to be able to succeed with. Okay, so here again is really the year by year foundation, year roadmap for your first year. Quarter 1, CRM at web implemented and your website optimized for lead capture. Quarter 2, launch that platform and start building the initial list. Quarter 3, work towards creating a content calendar and then beginning regular publishing. And here's the reality: feel free to reuse your material, just because the reality is the faster, if you're constantly growing your audience, there's a good chance that, if you're say adding maybe 700 followers per week, theoretically, well, actually you're adding, let's say, 100 followers per week. Let's use that. And if you have a 7-week rotation, the reality is every time you cycle through something, at least 700 people are seeing this for the first time. There's a very good chance that a lot of people are a lot more than that, or just because of the fact that, people who may have been connected with you may not see it for the first, second, third, or even fourth times. It may be the fifth time. So the reality is you don't have to feel like you have to be incredibly original for an entire year. Most likely get things cycling through. And then the final, for the first fourth quarter of that year, implement your analytics and establish your baselines. So then year 2, when you're integrating systems, get your website, CRM, and email systems connected. It's possible if if you like how everything is, that you may able to integrate it right away, especially like with the integrations we have today. Implement lead follow-up automation. I mean, like, for example, MailChimp has this journey where you have all these follow-up emails that get sent out. Launch Google Ads with ROAS tracking, and then create management dashboards. I mean, the reality is this is where you can really start bringing things together. And then your third year, optimize your performance. A and B testing with things, advanced segmentation, full attribution model, and then complete documentation. And then obviously years 4 and 5, which is when, you could be really getting ready for exit prep. This is where, as the owner, you should be reducing it to 0. Ideally, in this process, this has already happened to the point where, okay, you've delegated this to somebody else. You need to be building the marketing team depth. And the reason why this is important is because the reality is, at the world in which we live with marketing is what we do today. And this is really, 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 really important. What we're doing today might not be relevant tomorrow. Direct marketing actually went out for a while, then it's coming back just because of the fact that there's so little competition. I think email marketing is actually going to start dying out here just because of the fact that there's just so much clutter in email inboxes. And not only that, but also we have, let's really throw this one into the fire. The reality is social media platforms are going to, become popular. We're going to figure out how it's going to work, and then they might die away. So the reality is there's going to need to be a lot of flexibility here, just because marketing does tend to evolve rapidly. So that is really, really the big thing. So now that we've taken a look at this, let's take a look at your tech stack with marketing. Here's what we would label as essential: is if you're 2 to 10 million in revenue, CRM, HubSpot, free or starter would work. MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, a WordPress website, Google Analytics. You could be spending between 500 to 1,000 to 1,500. Most likely, if you do everything right, you can probably get it less than that. But the reality is that is what you need. Okay, 10 million to 25 million revenue. Okay, this is where HubSpot Professional is going to be important. You're going to need to have your marketing automation figured, a professional website. SEO tools such as SEMrush, your monthly spend might be getting between 2 to 5,000. And then, when you get up to 25 to 50 million, that's when, okay, HubSpot Enterprise, possibly Salesforce, you're going to need to have a full automation suite here. You're going to have customer analytics and business intelligence, and you're going to have an attribution platform likely. And your spend will be likely between 5 to 15,000. And what is important is what's going to be demonstrating you have an investable infrastructure is your integrated CRM has clean data. And, it's not like, okay, there are going to be some records that, the data is going to be incomplete. But if, as a general rule, you have everything clean and as thorough as possible, you'll be in great shape. You're going to have marketing automation in place. You're going to have attribution and reporting dashboards to indicate what's going on. You're going to have lead scoring and pipeline management. And then you're going to have a documented tech stack with data portability. In short, that is what you're going to need in order to demonstrate that you have an investable infrastructure. So now that we've taken a look at that with tech stack, let's take a quick look at documentation that is going to satisfy due diligence. Here are some essential SOPs that you need to develop. For your campaign management, you need to have everything figured out from campaign planning and launch, your content calendar management, email campaign deployment, and paid advertising management. For your lead management, you need lead capture and entry standards, lead scoring and qualification criteria, sales handoff processes, and then follow-up cadence and scripts. For your analytics and reporting, you're going to need weekly and monthly reporting processes, KPI tracking procedures, data quality assurance. And then for brand content, you're going to need to have your brand guidelines and style guide, your content approval process, and your asset creation flow. If at this point you still might not be 100% sure why I'm stressing that getting a director of marketing or a CMO in place is important, I hope that after going through all this is key. Because the reality is this is all work that is going to not only require somebody who has technical knowledge, but also creative knowledge, especially when it comes to the brand guidelines and style guide. So, while obviously these are things we can start working towards, really the best thing is to make sure that you get a director of marketing who not only knows what needs to happen, but understands this is what we need to be working towards as we get this business ready for sale. Here's a tip. Document everything as you build. Every activity should, result in both outcomes and documentation. In other words, you want to be able to repeat this as much as possible. So now that we've taken a look at that, let's take a look briefly at the metrics that matter. As I mentioned earlier, your LTV to CAC ratio, it should be 3-to-1 or higher. If it's below 2-to-1, it's a red flag. Your CAC payback, you should be getting paid back in under 12 months. It's a red flag if it's over 18 months. Your marketing budget, ideally about 8% of your revenue. It's a red flag if it's substantially less or substantially more than that. Target 8%. So obviously, you can do the math if you're a 10, 15, 20 million revenue company. Customer churn, if it's under 5% monthly, that's to be normal. If it's over 10%, that's a potential red flag. If it's substantially higher than that, that's a major red flag. Your pipeline for marketing, the target should be 40% or more. If it's under 20%, it's probably a red flag. Customer concentration. If you're less than 15% for a client, for your largest client, that's great. I mean, my rule of thumb is, as that adage, as that saying I believe that was popular in the 90s, how low can you go? Well, if you can get it as low as possible, that would be great. Now, when it comes to historical data, if you can have 3 to 5 years of monthly lead volume by source, if you can have your conversion rates through your funnel stages, if you can have CAC trends over time, and if you can have revenue attribution by channel, that would be great. Just because of the fact that, um, bringing in an analyst. I recently did a webinar on data and analytics. You can see how having an analyst looking at a lot of this stuff will be very helpful. And this is part of the reason why analysts are sought after, and why, obviously you can have an analyst serve in any department in your business. There's a very good likelihood that eventually they're going to start focusing on one specific area just because of the amount of data. Okay, so now that we've talked about that, let's discuss some quick wins that we can do to start today. Implement or clean up your CRM. I mean, obviously, HubSpot is a free and a good starting point. I've used Insightly before. There are a lot of CRM programs out there. If you don't have one, get to work with one. If you have one, really start trying to get it cleaned up, especially if you haven't really been very careful with what you do, and just start trying to figure out how you can get the most out of it. Now, you can then set up Google Analytics 4. It's free and it's an essential baseline. Create a marketing calendar. I mean, it's really not that difficult. The beauty with, these LLMs such as Claude and ChatGPT is you can be like, okay, generate a list of topics, and then you could work on, just content that way. I mean, really just create a calendar and just keep it simple, but just work on a calendar, figure out what works for you, and then really work to just make sure that you're consistently posting. Then start tracking one metric. It could be leads per month by source. And then, start documenting one process at a time. And really the first thing you can do is, okay, what is your best performing market activity? Get that documented, then move on to the next. So really, as you can see, a lot of this, it's just simple and doing it. And my recommendation to you is, if you can find a way to delegate it to somebody because you're the business owner, do it. Just because delegating is going to be key. Now, some first year priorities. The first thing what you want to do is you need to move from ad hoc to the defined maturity stage. Basically, you're taking steps in the right direction, and, establish lead source tracking and create basic email automation, and start by delegating at least one marketing owned activity from owner to team. And, if you found that easy, do another and then another. Basically, keep doing it, because eventually you need to get down to where you are not doing anything. Now, some common mistakes to avoid. Obviously, you need to buying tools before establishing processes. You may not even use that tool. So wait and figure it out, and only buy it until it's clear, okay, this is the process, and yes, we're going to need this. Another tool is tracking vanity metrics. I mean, yeah, I'm sure, impressions on social media, total impressions on social media is great. But what's important is we realize, okay, that has nothing to do with revenue impact. Another big mistake is not documenting as you build. The beauty with a lot of the AI that we have today is, especially with, recorded media, is there's this transcription ability. You can document it, everything. And then, once you take the transcript, you can say, okay, can work towards, like, maybe say trying to build procedures from this transcript, get it cleaned up, and then just work from there. The final thing is one that I know I'm guilty of, and that is trying to do everything at once. Do it one at a time, get something fixed, and then move on. You will be amazed how fast things will go. Okay, so here is the kind of like the wrap up. And here are some key takeaways. Marketing systems equal valuation multiple premiums. You're going to get much, much higher offers the better your marketing systems are. Owner dependency is the number one value killer. I mean, if there's a way to ensure that you're going to have to take a steep discount, keep your owner dependency there. Um, Buyers evaluate marketing infrastructure. CAC, LTV, attribution, documentation, team capability. In other words, they're looking to see, okay, what type of engine do you have going that's going to really feed things? 3 to 5 years is really the right time frame to move from ad hoc to optimized maturity. Um, you know, First thing you got to do is you got to start with CRM and documentation. Everything builds on this foundation. If you do not start here, then you might as well just give up. And then finally, the goal is you need to develop a marketing plan that runs without you. It's systems, not the founder, that's driving growth. That's what we need. So here are what your next steps need to be. This week, you know, what I would encourage you to do, maybe review this webinar and, the audits that we've done. I want you to, take a look at them and think, okay, how far along am I? Identify your biggest founder dependency risk. In other words, the easiest way to do it is, what is the most significant thing you do from a marketing standpoint? That is a liability. And then finally, schedule CRM implementation or cleanup. What you might do is you might even take up with whoever your CRM provider is, just ask, say, hey, is it possible for somebody to maybe take a look at and see how we can make more of this? I'm sure that, hey, it's probably going to involve some kind of consultation, which means they get paid. So I'm sure they would be able to help you out there just because they stand to benefit. And you would too at the end of the day. So this month, establish one documented marketing metric. Then create your first marketing SOP, and then simply set up Google Analytics for properly. And then, for this quarter, develop a 90-day marketing calendar. Then, implement lead source tracking, and then document your top performing marketing processes. So really, the best time for you to have started building this exit ready marketing infrastructure was the day you founded the business. The next best day is today. So here is where we conclude. I know I've covered a lot of stuff. Really, the big takeaway from this is that because of the level of importance of marketing, this is why we need to make sure that we figure out what you're doing and we systematize it. And then once we systematize it, we need to make sure we get somebody who has a good bit of experience with marketing. And the reason why it's important, we need to get somebody who is experienced with marketing to become the director of marketing, is just because of the fact that you're getting ready for one of the biggest events of your professional life when you sell this business. You want to get somebody, you don't need to get somebody who's actually been through a M&A transaction in marketing. You do need to find somebody who is a really good and exceptional marketer, just because of the fact what they need to build is something that's not only going to help, increase the value for the sale, but also continue to help this business hum along. So having said all of that, I just wanted to thank you all again for taking the time out of your schedule to attend this webinar. I would love to talk with any of you if this has resonated, and it's my hope that hope to be able to assist you in some capacity. So thank you all for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of this day.